Today, well, yesterday I started putting in a ladder rack, roll cage, not really roll cage, sports bar, in Toxic. I like to carry stuff, I like to use it, so I have been known to just sit stuff on the roof, which the dents aren't from that, but previously in its old life, I'd say that's what happened. So what I did, a mate of mine was closing his business down. He had a bunch of this pipe, pretty heavy duty. What is it, 4mm wall or something, 3mm wall. It was already bent up. He gave me about 3 or 4 of them, pretty cheap. It's about 1300 wide from side to side, and the posts are a little bit different length. It's a little bit skewed. That doesn't matter because I'm going to have to cut it in half. So I've already started this. I've got these plates, just 100mm plates, holes already drilled, and luckily I've got a lift out floor section in my bed here. So what I've done, I've just bolted down with M12 bolts. They're Gal, just from a hardware store, through that 50mm bed frame. It goes right the way around. And then I've also got the mounts. I've used Holton 1 tonne of mounts under there to hold the bed onto it as well. So the bolts actually go through there. I'll shorten the bolts up later. So got one there, got one here, still need to put a bolt in there. So now what I'm going to do is measure centres, and then I will cut my tube down in the middle, through there somewhere, and I'll join it back together, but I'll also cut the legs to the length. What I'm trying to work out, I want it to be functional, so I'm sort of thinking it needs to come up above the cab. Well, it does need to come above the cab to be functional, but I don't really want it coming above the cab, because I don't really want it sticking out from the front. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to make up one for the back as well eventually. This is partially for looks, it's partially to tie stuff on, it's partially functional. So at the back of the tray here, underneath where the wheels and that are, I'll put another couple of plates, and I'll just show you. Where are they? I've got another couple of plates, just a matter of finding where they are. We'll get back to that. So yeah, I'll put another couple of plates in the back. What I'm thinking is, if I put the back bar lower than the front one, then when I've got a longer sort of load that I need to carry, then it should be able to mount at the back, come across the top of the roof, sort of pointing up a bit without sitting on the roof. Nothing new, this is the way a lot of ladder racks work. I'm just sort of thinking about it as I'm saying it. So I've just got to work out the height that I want for the front one. I don't want to see it from the front. Ultimately I'd actually like it low, because it's really about the look, but it seems silly having it there and not being functional and clearing the roof. So enough of my rambling. I'll cut it to the highest that I think I need, and then I'll continue to cut the legs shorter until such time that I'm happy with the height of it. Let's get back to it. Okay, so I've decided I'm not going to put a rear bar on this. It's just so I can carry sheet metal every now and then, and lengths of steel, maybe some timber, but mainly steel type things for builds. So I don't want to put a rear bar on it forever. I actually just want the look of a pretty cool looking sports bar just sort of coming off the back of the cab and across, just with some bars coming back down towards the centre of the guards. So what I've decided, I actually want the bar to sit sort of between the top of the window and the top of the roof, which puts it lower than the roof. But what I've worked out, ran a straight edge along, what I've worked out is if I put the bar there exactly where I want it, and then when I carry long items, I can sit it on top of the bar, and I'll just run it straight down and sit on top of the tailgate. That gives me a pretty sharp angle up, which will clear the roof, and away we go. And if I do have any concerns, any problems, I can just tape a bit of timber to the top of the bar to give me the extra height. Again, it's more about the look than the practicality. It seems that I should make it practical at the same time. So what I'm going to do in the first place is cut the legs at 1 metre long. My wife came out and helped me. We worked out the angles. Just got it marked. Same on the other side. So the tape just gives me a straight line. I was going to cut it with a grinder and I thought, hey, I own a cut-off saw, so let's not make life hard. I'm going to take the bar off these panel stands, sit it down on the ground, cut it, make lots of noise, make lots of sparks, make lots of metal shavings, and then we'll sit it in place. But I've still got to cut it in the middle to narrow it. So a couple more steps. Well, I'm glad I remembered I had the cut-off saw, because it was a lot easier than the angle grinder. So about 2 minutes later, got those cut. Shortly I'll cut it in the middle, work out the size. I'm just going to sort of sit it in place at this height at the moment before I cut it, just to see how I like it. But yeah, best $30 or $40 second hand I ever bought. Okay, so I worked out this bar is 1320 from side to side. It's laying on its side at the moment. 1320 outside to outside, which I'm finding the easiest way to measure at the moment. So outside of the tube to the outside of the tube, I need a total of 1180. The reason being my bed is 1220. Those plates are 100mm, so I'm going to bring it in 20mm from either side, so the round 60mm tube is centered to that 100mm plate, which means I have 20mm gap on either side. So my tray is 1220, take off 20mm either side. I need 1180 width outside to outside of pipe. So my simple maths here, it's 1320 the bar at the moment. I need 1180. I need to cut out 140. I want the cut to be in the centre, just because. So what I'm doing is I found the centre, so half of 1320 is 660. Found the centre, and then I just measured 70mm either side of that for my 140. So I measured up 70mm, down 70mm. So the piece in the middle, either side of those bits of tape, is 140mm. So I'm going to cut it out there. Make sure it's all nice and true again, so each leg is parallel to each other. And then I'll grind the gal off and I'll weld it back together and have my correct width. That's the plan. Let's do it. Okay, so took that 140mm piece out the middle like I described. Sit on the ground there. I've just got my bar laid out on the ground, nice flat concrete. Got a straight edge there, so I get the line straight. Got my measure there just to check. It's come out spot on, it's a bit hard to read, but 1180mm on the Marnie. So that looks good. I've cleaned up the gal, cleaned the gal off at any point, and I'm going to weld it. And also what I've done is I've just chamfered the edge so that when I weld in here, I get good penetration down into the V, and I'll just leave it about 1mm apart as well, so that I get good penetration to join the two bars together. And then I can grind it off. Probably won't grind it completely flat, so I leave a little bit more of that weld in there for strength. But I should be able to get it somewhat flat and strong. I'll have a look in my scrap bin actually, and if I've got a piece of pipe in here, I don't really care what size it is. I'm not sure if I'll have anything, but if I've got a piece of pipe floating around, I might actually even put a plug through the middle of it, so dowel the two together internally, just to give it a little bit of extra strength, but we'll see. Anyway, back into it. Okay, so I just put a couple of spot welds around there just to hold it in place. Always be aware with gal, it's toxic, it's poisonous, so I ground it off so that I could weld to it, but also there's gal on the inside of the pipe, I'm outside here, I got a nice breeze. I haven't got a respirator on, I probably should or could have, but all the smoke is blowing away, so I'm pretty happy with it. I checked my measurements from bottom to bottom again, 1180, spot on. I welded a couple of spots on one side and then flipped it over, checked it, it had pulled together, pulled in a bit, so it was not a straight line across this way. So I just tweaked it, put some welds, and now it's good. So before I fully weld it, I'm going to let it cool down for a second. I'm going to lift it in place onto the back of the truck, see how it looks, and if I'm happy with it, I'll continue to weld it. Happy with the width, I'll continue to weld it, and then I'll set it in place and I'll check out the height. I'm not going to be surprised if I take another 20 or 30 mil off the end of the post, but I wanted to cut it long and shorten it if need be, rather than cut it short and go, I should have left it longer. Okay, off camera, my wife and I set it up in place. It looked good, does everything that I want it to. So I'm running with it. So I've gone around and welded it up. May not be pretty, but it'll do. I'll grind it off a bit just to smooth it out. I know that I've got plenty of penetration. I know that because I blew a big hole in it at one stage, and when I had the opportunity I looked inside and I could see plenty of penetration, so I'm happy. I didn't end up sleeving it because I couldn't find anything. It'll be good. So I welded up in the middle. I ground it back, ended up grinding it flat. I was quite confident there was plenty of penetration there. So once it's painted, you won't see a seam through there. Got it in place. Just got it tacked in a few spots. I put a builder's square. Got a roofing square. Just sort of set it in the back of the bar. Back of the bar. It's a bit hard to film. To the tray, so that it's square. Sits out from the cab a little bit. If I had some way of bending the bar, I'd actually like it so that it sort of went up like that, the same angle as the back of the cab, but it doesn't. As I said, I'll probably get some outriggers, bring them down from sort of 2/3 of the way up the bar to about the front of where the toolbox is sitting at the moment. I'll paint that flat black. So now I'm going to unbolt it, set it down on the ground, weld it right the way around, put it in place. I kept it so that it's just about 5 mil from the tray here, so that we don't have an annoying rattle. If I do have an annoying rattle, when I put the outriggers there, will stop that from happening. I'm not going to be able to do those straight away because, as I said, I don't have any way of bending the metal. So I've got some metal, I've got some tube, I've just got someone to bend it for me. So I'm happy with the height. If you look up there, it probably sits, I don't know, a bit deceptive, but it sits about 50 mil lower than the roof, the bulge in the roof. So when I have something sitting on it, I'll be able to have it from there down to the tailgate and be able to carry some stuff. Also be able to tie things to it, and generally this is my shop truck, so to speak. I don't have a shop, but I do have a truck. So I use this to pick up anything. It's a toy, it's good. So yeah, I'll pop it off, weld it. Next time you see it, it may even be painted. We'll see. Yeah, I just thought I'd show you this. It's out, standing up, it's nice and straight, true. As I said, just got it tacked in a few spots. I'll run some weld around it. Come back. Okay, I've welded those plates on the bottom. Came out pretty well. I'm no welder, but they'll be alright. And I've just given it a buzz over. I just use a angle die grinder, and at the moment it's got a strip disc on it. Gives good tooth for the paint. I'm going to paint this with a red primer, like a red brown primer, and then I'll paint it with black over the top of that. And the reason being is that it's going to get scratched, and when it gets scratched, it might as well fit in with the rest of it. So I find the red primer underneath just helps that look. So there it is. I'll give it a coat of primer, give it some paint, I'll come back. Given it a couple of coats of primer, I won't flip it over, but on the bottom of the plates I gave that a couple of coats of primer and also gave it a coat of black paint. I like to coat everything that I can, although my truck might not look at every single surface that I ever do. I sand, prime, prep, prime, so that it lasts. So while I had the opportunity, I just threw a bit of extra paint on that there as well. And where the bottom plates are going, I just put some new oil on the boards just to preserve them. So this hasn't been done for a while. Looks pretty messy at the moment, but hasn't been done for a while. What I actually use there is just a decking oil. This is the same decking oil that I use for my decks here at home. It's just a water-based thing. Seems to last quite well. The fact of the matter is that timber in the back of my tray is maple. I think it's maple anyway. It was, which isn't preferred for outdoor use, but it was free. Those boards are 240 mil wide and I think about 38 mil thick or something, and I got it for free, so it'll last as long as it lasts, which is doing pretty good. So I just try to keep it preserved, and that way it'll last for longer, and it looks pretty good. I don't want it to look too pretty though, it'll stand out. I'll come back when this is painted black. So the primer's set for a little while. It's a pretty hot day here today, it's about 35 degrees. So I'm glad I'm in the shade, but in my favour, everything's drying quickly. So primer's set, dried. I just gave it a light rub, very light rub with 320 grit. I put some paint on it, just gives it a bit more key. Seems to work well. I like red primer, it always grabs well. I also took the opportunity to chuck some black paint on the spare tyre. Never had one in this, so it'll be good to have one. So here we have it. Got the bar finished in black, flat black, red primer underneath, so when it scratches you can see it. Gave the deck boards a coat of oil, gave it a bit of a clean up. I want to seal down either side of the boards with something just to stop leaves and mulch and sand and stuff getting caught down there. When I've oiled it, oiled all the end grain, just trying to preserve it as best I can. Toolbox box back in place. That hatch just sits there, it's so heavy, it doesn't need to be bolted down. It's pretty handy to get to things. I am going to put my spare wheel under there eventually. But there we have it. As I said, still want to put outriggers on it that come back on an angle, sort of to just past the halfway point on the guard. But it's functional, looks good, solid as can be. She's not going anywhere. Personally, I think it looks good. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me on Toxic Garage Customs. I'll see you on the next one.